meeting of the Harwich Conservation Commission in the Don B. Griffin Room at Town Hall on Wednesday, July 5th, 2023. This meeting continues to be a hybrid meeting. Those who want to participate online can find login directions on the agenda posted on the town website. We're going to starting this meeting, we're going to start with the Pledge of Allegiance as requested by a few of our commission members. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. So the next item on the agenda is public comment. I was anticipating Mike McCaskill to join us to give us an update on 374 Main Street, but this is a busy week, so I will check in with him and arrange for next meeting, hopefully.
Pencil them in on the agenda for next meeting.
Yeah. Is there any other public comment? Since we have public comment on the agenda, anyone else who wishes to speak may do so now. Hearing none, we will move on to hearings. Oh, no, the next item actually is discussion and possible vote on state land grant application for the Six Ponds Great Woods Conservation Area. Do we have someone from HCT to speak to this?
Mark Robinson from the Compact.
From the Cape Cod Compact? Is that who that is? I can't.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
Mr. Chair, Michael.
Oh, you're there. Oh, okay. Hi, Mike.
Yes, hi, Mr. Chair and members of the Conservation Commission and Town Conservation Administrator Michael Locke, Executive Director of the Harwich Conservation Trust, and here to speak on this topic, and I'm available to assist as needed. Mark Robinson will speak on the topic. He's contracted with the town of Harwich to complete the land grant agreement, which, as background, is the $400,000 state grant that will reimburse the town's Community Preservation Act Open Space Fund, $400,000 toward the $950,000 authorization approved by May 2022 town meeting vote toward the Six Ponds Great Woods project.
Thank you. Mark, do you have anything to add? Or Mr. Robinson?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mark Robinson, the Executive Director of the Compact of Cape Cod Conservation Commission, Conservation Trust. That'd be fun. Under contract to the town of Harwich to help prepare this baseline document and shepherd the documents the town needs for the reimbursement from the state. I think this is obviously it's just trying to set the stage of the property as it's coming into conservation status owned by the Harwich Conservation Trust with the conservation restriction held by the town, and the town is not responsible for the management of the property. That's HCT's responsibility, and I understand that they will be conducting a lot of surveys and analysis of the property so that they can develop a good management plan over time and associated with the different uses of the property and trail layout and whatnot. But what I've tried to do is to document what's out there now in a very cursory way. It's a large property, a lot of things going on. But I have to say that having been out there 4 times this spring and walking around different times a day, it's really a remarkable property in terms of its natural features, its size, obviously its use for trails. And I think the town should be very, very proud and happy to have it under conservation status. So what we need to do today is to, if there are any things that you need to see modified, we should take note of that. But time is of the essence. We're trying to get the documents together for the town to submit to the state for the reimbursement. And if that can be done tonight, that would be wonderful. Have the Conservation Commission sign it.
Thank you. Amy, do you have anything to add?
Nothing to add, well, the only thing I have to add is more, potential little small corrections to the document in terms of the signature page in section, 6, where the signature page for the Conservation Commission is. Still, Don Howell is listed as a member of the commission and is not. He was the selectman liaison, but he was not a member and he's not the liaison anymore. And also Stanley Pastuzak, his term ended and he elected not to re-up. I mention this because we only have 4 people here tonight and there's, looks like 8 lines, so I just don't want there to be any confusion that that there was not a majority. We do have a majority of the commission here present, but that signature page does not accurately show that, and I'm sorry I didn't catch it until today. Also, when I went to try to edit it, over the word, where it says a majority of the Conservation Commission, there's a little bubble, like a notation bubble, that I cannot, when I try to edit the page, get off. And I'm sure we want this to look all nice and proper. So if maybe that can be taken care of and Don Howell and Stan Pastuzak removed. And Sophia is actually still a alternate member, so she should not be on that signature page as well. I could get the signatures from the commission over the next few days, and I'm sorry I didn't catch that until right now, but I would recommend the commission sign off on things and have the chairman tonight sign on the billing form for the grant reimbursement.
Mr. Chair, I apologize that there's some mistakes on that page. This is not a legal document. It's really more of a report. And I think that it would be sufficient just for Amy to strike through the names that are inappropriate. And if we just had the 4 signatures, I think that would be sufficient for this purpose.
Okay.
Thank you.
If you felt we needed more, could get Wayne and Allen to come in,
Yeah,
as
but we
opposed
don't
to
know. It
having.
just says a majority, and we have
Okay.
a majority here,
Okay.
so.
All right. Anything else?
No, will you vote to sign the land grant?
Well, let's
Okay, sorry.
see if anyone
Yes.
else has any questions. Mark?
Apologies.
Jim?
My questions are more administrative than substantive. Amy, are we the ones that are signing it for the town, or are we signing it authorizing the submission of the application?
We are basically certifying that the baseline documentation report that Mark Robinson did on behalf of the town is accurate and complete, and I've reviewed it. I've been to the site a number of times, and I would agree with it. That's what we're signing. Correct me if I'm wrong, but we're just signing that the documentation report is accurate.
That's correct. The motion is actually, I think, to accept the report and to authorize the Conservation Commission to sign it as an accurate representation of the property at this time.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Brad?
No comments, just thank you both very much for all your efforts on this.
No comments.
Okay, I have no comments or questions either, so a motion is in order.
Do we have any comments from the audience? please?
Good question. Anyone care to comment or question? Doesn't look like we have anyone other than Mike and Mark online, so it doesn't look like we have any input from the audience here.
Okay, then I will move that we accept the report developed for the state land grant application for the Six Ponds Great Woods Conservation Area, and that we authorize a signature by members of this commission of the document representing that it is an accurate representation of the property.
I'll second.
Further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
4-0. Thank you.
Thank you all very much. It's a great partnership between the town and Harwich Conservation Trust. Thank you all very much. Thank you, Amy,
You're welcome.
for your work in this effort as well.
Who do I send the originals to?
So Amy, I just need a scan of the signature page when
Scans,
you're
okay.
done.
Okay,
So I can add it into the report as at the end as a new page.
all right, very good.
And I'll see if I can get rid of that bubble while I'm at it.
Thanks, sorry, I just noticed it till now, but better late than never, yeah, right?
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Next here is notice of intent for 109 Riverside Drive, map 4, parcel A3-A2, for proposed reconstruction of a licensed dock.
They are looking for a continuation to July 19th.
Okay,
Well, I move we grant a continuation for 109 Riverside Drive, map 4, parcel A3-2, until the next hearing on July, what was it,
19th.
19th. Thank you.
And I'll second.
discussion? All those in favor? Aye. 4-0. Next is 587 Pleasant Lake Ave. This is still a notice of intent for 587 Pleasant Lake Ave, map 110, parcel C1-93, for the creation of an on-grade path to water, pruning to create a view corridor and a small landing near the pond. This hearing has been continued from June 22nd of this year. Amy,
Too as well. Ann and Trudy Collins, the owners, are here as well, but if you want, I'll just give a quick update with where we're at.
please.
At the last meeting, the Conservation Commission continued for the purposes of having review by Natural Heritage and Endangered Species Program over the weekend or Friday, Monday maybe. Recently, we got a letter from Natural Heritage suggesting conditions, which we could incorporate in the order of conditions should you approve. They're really not, in my mind, knowing the site necessarily, but we can incorporate them. One being the limit of work. It's very flat. It's extremely vegetated there. They're really only going to probably run a 4-foot wide gravely to create the path. So I don't see, silt fence or anything like that necessary in this project. We could stake the center line of their contractor could stake the center line of the path, and during a pre-construction meeting I can review that. But that's the only ground disturbance we're talking about here is the path, and then, the little bit wider of an area for their bench, that 4x6 area for a bench. The rest of it is lowering of vegetation, lowering of shrubs, and raising of lower limbs of trees. So erosion and sedimentation controls, I don't see as, I think they're put in than of use. And then there's no work beyond the bank or mean high water line of the pond, so condition 1 is irrelevant to me. I would recommend approval. I would recommend the use of flat stones to hold your bench instead of a deck. Just a couple flat stones where the legs would be, rather than a deck, because a deck would require, in my mind, a variance from the 50-foot no disturb zone, which We generally do not grant if there's other options available, so I would recommend approval with that stipulation.
Okay, thank you. Questions or comments from commissioners? Mark?
I agree with every word that Amy just said.
No additional comments.
Briefly, I missed the last hearing, and
Mhm.
so, this is on Black Pond?
Yes.
Oh, yeah, nice. We rebuilt the fish whaling in the Black Pond last year, so I hope you got some fish that came in
Oh,
this past season. So is the bench there, or is it pre-existing? No, it's a new bench, and so,
A new bench,
yeah.
they have no view of the
Right.
pond, and,
Yeah.
well,
Mhm.
so it would just be, it would be a new bench, it's
Yeah.
4-foot wide path, and then where the bench would be closer to the edge, they would widen that to a 6-foot width
Mhm.
in order to see that.
Yeah.
And we had talked last time, they had asked for a 4x6 wooden platform, but there was discussion about that being a new structure.
Right.
So I believe Mark had mentioned putting a couple of flagstones or flat stones really to support the legs, support the bench instead.
Mhm. All right, thank you, sounds good.
Sophia?
no questions for me.
So I have one question for you, Amy, which is that the letter from the state, from Mass Wildlife, says in bold, to avoid prohibited take of state-listed species, the condition that's attached to this letter must be met. So you're suggesting they're irrelevant. It seems like a bit of a conflict there. I don't know what, I mean, it seems harmless to include them in the order of conditions,
It's harmless
doesn't
to
it?
include them.
So I suggest we include them in the order of conditions.
My take on it is that they don't know the site, or, I mean, not trying to say anything against them, but they don't come down and review the sites. They have somewhat boilerplate conditions for projects of this type on ponds that have, I think it's pond shore smartweed is the species, which is actually the same species that they flagged for a project we recently had on the north side of Hinkley Pond. So I'm just guessing that that was the case, that it's hard to tell from the plan what the topography is on the site. It is very flat, and they probably just, over an abundance of caution, put these conditions on. We can certainly include them in the order, but I think in practice, it does not make sense to, you would disturb more to put the erosion controls in. But it can still be
Okay.
worded in the order.
Any other comment? Well, I suggest a motion is in order unless you ladies have anything further to say. Okay.
It's fine.
Okay, if not, I will move that we approve the notice of intent for 587 Pleasant Lake Avenue, map 110, parcel C1-93, under the condition that the proposed bench is supported by flat stones instead of the original proposed deck.
I'll second that.
Further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
4-0, thank you.
Great, thank you. Thank you.
All right,
Just so you know, our next process, in 2 weeks, we'll formally sign your permit, and then we'll call you when it's ready, but you can start lining up a contractor if you wish to.
Wonderful.
Great.
But in two weeks' time, you'll have your actual permit, okay?
Okay, great.
Thank
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you so much. I'm going to enjoy my room with a view.
Since we have waterfront property, you can't see the water.
I know. Maybe we'll see those fish.
I hope they keep coming for you, yeah.
They do a very nice job of keeping a very nice natural buffer there, and it's grown in substantially for them.
Okay, so the next item on the agenda is an application for an extension to the order of conditions for Allen Harbor Yacht Club, 371 Lower County Road, DEP SE 32-2390. This is a request for a one-year extension to help further establish mitigation plantings.
Yeah, like a lot of the projects, we've seen a couple extension requests recently, and a lot of them having to do with plants that were installed in the last year or two, not even with the above ground irrigation, really not surviving that drought, that heat and that drought that we had last year. So they would like one more year to just get it a little bit better established before they ask for a cert of compliance. And I'd recommend that you give them a year.
Okay, again, comments? Sophia?
No.
None?
No comment.
Mark? I don't have any comments. So a motion is in order.
Okay, I will move that we extend the order of conditions for a period of 1 year for the Allen Harbor Yacht Club, 371 Lower County Road, DEP SE 32-2390.
Second?
Discussion? All those in favor? Aye. None opposed, 4-0. Next is discussion and possible vote on a request from the Allen Harbor Beach Association to put approximately 50-foot long section of temporary Moby mat over a beach path through the dunes that the association has beach access through for mobility purposes.
These things, this is what you gave me, right?
Mostly, yeah, the
Yeah.
last page is an addition.
Okay, this is what was in your Dropbox with the exception of the last
Oh.
page.
Thank you.
Oh yeah, nice little
Thank you.
visual of the Moby map.
Hi.
Okay,
Good evening. Eileen Wilson, A.M. Wilson Associates, here for the Allen's Harbor Beach Club, who is experiencing, or which is experiencing, a phenomenon that I think most of us in this room are experiencing, aging and the associated mobility problems that frequently go along with it. They have a number of association members now that have some kind of mobility issues, need to use canes or walkers. One gentleman who has a motorized wheelchair with balloon tires that he can get down to the beach with. But for anybody who has seen the beach path recently, and on the second page of your handout is the plan for the boardwalk that's there. That boardwalk is only 30 inches wide, and so it's a difficult challenge to utilize that chair because the tires are just a little bit wider and you have to balance on the edges. It's a little precarious. We actually are in the process of developing a plan to come back to you at the end of the summer or early fall to reconstruct the boardwalk a little bit wider so that it'll take care of some of these problems in the long run. But for now, what we are seeking is sort of a way to get these people to be able to use the beach for the summer, is to, in particular at the end, the oceanfront end of the boardwalk where the structure has been covered with blowing sand, is to use the, what are called Moby mats. And if you look at the pictures on the last page of the handout, the mats there are actually used by the Hyannis Yacht Club, and they're laid down across the public beach at Calmus. They use them both to access the shore and to pull small sailboats, lasers. So since my grandson is a competitive sailor of lasers, and he uses this material to get his boat in and out, we know that the stuff is pretty stable. It isn't just a rubberized mat, it's more of a woven fabric, and so the sand that accumulates on the top actually sits down through it, and it tends to float on top of the sand. But it provides a stable enough surface so that people can walk on it and use small motorized wheeled vehicles or pulleys that are that's the kind of thing that we want to use here. So we're looking, we estimate it'll be about 50 linear feet of this stuff. It comes in a 4-foot wide width. And it has these, if you look at the last page again, you'll see these little blue plastic, almost staples, and with little pins that go down through grommets that are in the material to stabilize the material. And at the end of the season, you roll it back up and put it in storage to use for the next year. We do plan on incorporating some of this material in the final design, so when we come back later in the season, you'll see it. By then, I hope I will have a sample for you to see, but I understand that it's used
You have
on
some?
one of the public beaches in
Yeah.
town.
Couple of them.
It's all, Bill Ionetter. I sit
I'm
on the
sorry.
board with Allen Harbor Beach Association, and I'm also head of this project to carry this forward. And if you've been down to Race Point, they use identical mats that Arlene is describing. And the only other comment I would add is that the majority of the 50 feet already has a hard boardwalk that's 30 inches wide. And the sand keeps kind of blowing up on top of it, which creates it just puts a lot of soft sand up there. And so it's not only the people that are in wheelchair type devices, but also people that need a cane or a walker. When you got soft sand and you're coming down an inclined slope, it's pretty difficult. And it's getting harder and harder for those people to get down on a seasonal basis. So those are some of the issues we're trying to
So-
mitigate.
Rather than excavate the sand away from the boardwalk that's buried, what we'd like to do is just leave that boardwalk and this covering sand in place and just roll this stuff out on top. We'd also like to be able to take maybe a 10-foot section of it at the end like a T, so that it flares out just beyond the end of the dune at the beach edge, so that it makes a sort of a wide place for people to be able to lay down some of their stuff or sit without going onto the soft sand.
Yeah, the people that have the mobility issues, 30 inches is just not enough width for them to be able to navigate down a slope. They need some long latitude in terms of space as they're going down.
And this would just be for this season.
Okay, thank you. Amy, do you have comments?
So when Arlene and Bill contacted me, they were curious, could this be done as an administrative review for the year? Could it be done as an emergency certification? Emergency certifications are for public health and safety reasons. Arlene, how many, or 67 families roughly
There's 67 families
that are,
in the association, and there's 45 families that we have two paths.
right, you have two paths.
And 45 families
Right.
that are identified
For this
directly for this path.
Yeah.
But then, anybody that has mobility issues, the association is gonna set up for them to be able to use this path as well. So
Right.
probably about, I'm gonna
Yeah.
guess about 50 families when we get done.
This path is a little shorter than the one farther to the east, and that one, the one to the east has stairs too, this one doesn't. So I said, well, I did not feel comfortable doing it as an administrative review, being in a resource area, even though it was, a temporary one-year thing. I thought if that was gonna be the case, then the commission should do it. And then I thought it was a bit of a stretch for an emergency certification. So my recommendation was for them to come here to you tonight and see if there was a way that the commission would authorize some work to make it more safe to get down there for the season. Don't think I recall the conversation about putting kind of the last 10 feet as almost a landing before the beach. As a temporary one-year thing, I don't think I could recommend that. It's putting a structure, I don't know, it doesn't seem like something administratively really could be allowed or is necessarily a necessity to just gain you better, safer access. But I would recommend, I guess with one, I'm a little concerned that the path where it's narrowest is less than 36 inches and you wanna put a 36-inch mat on top of there. I'm just curious how you're gonna prevent damage to dune vegetation in doing so. Are you gonna go with the contour that's there?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so you wouldn't be flattening it, cause right now it's kinda like this, the contour of the path, there's dunes on either side and it's like this.
Yeah.
And then you probably have 2-3 feet of sand and then the boardwalk's underneath. So as long as we would go with the contour,
Yeah, what I thought, we
Measured.
had talked about, you had said 36 inches.
yeah,
And for that section, because most of these wheeled vehicles typically run 30 inches. When you put like the sand tires on them and so forth, they're 36 inches. So that'll get the vehicles down there. When you get to the end,
yeah,
what ends up happening is because of the slope,
yeah,
and because we also have foot traffic across there, it's moving the sand out.
yep,
So if we do a 36-inch wide path
mhm,
off to the sides,
yeah,
when people walk up, they typically don't kind of come, a square turn.
right,
People tend to clip a corner, and when they clip that corner, they're constantly pushing the sand down.
yeah,
And so for people that have regular mobility, that aren't impaired, it's not a problem. But for the people that are impaired, it does present a problem, because then we've got a drop off on the edge. And that's why we're asking for a little bit wider
yep,
off the pathway, off the 36 inches.
We'll make sure that anywhere where there's a significant piece of vegetation, if there's a rugosa rose shrub or,
I don't care about those
yeah,
anymore.
we'll,
Those are mildly
or
invasive.
something that's more desirable, that will kind of shift it a little bit so it won't
Yeah, at
run
the-
over the.
At the very end,
the shrubs.
because I walked down there after you and I
Yeah.
met, and there isn't any vegetation that I could
Yeah,
see at the end where we're talking about.
No, it's
And
really where the path
Path
is
is,
narrow.
yeah, I'm not talking about widening that
Yeah.
out beyond the 36, because that kind of holds itself together there,
Yeah,
and it's short enough. I don't see that as an issue.
mm,
I had one of the people try it right after we took the boardwalk that was like this, and we dropped the slope on it. And they were actually able to navigate that.
Yeah.
But then when the foot traffic started, of course, it all started, falling off once we
Right.
leveled it. So that's where the moving mats will come in
Yeah.
handy, so.
and would the time, like until Columbus Day, would that be sufficient?
Oh, yeah, it's really through Labor Day, even the middle of September.
Okay,
These people are looking, for access, so, yeah, that would be more than sufficient.
fine. You good?
Okay, Mark?
I don't see this being a particular problem. I don't view this as a structure. I would view it as a surface treatment, and it's intended to be temporary. And, I mean, I would expect that the foot traffic may well be more detrimental to the area without that protection. So, to me, it seems like a positive circumstance.
Yeah, it is. And it's, you know, Amy had a good point, which is, we have a hardboard walk in there, and if we can start going over that sand instead of trying to clean it off so people can get across, I think it's better all the way around, because one of the things that I'm personally concerned about is at the end of that, we're starting to see some erosion, and I don't wanna lose that back, I mean, because that holds that whole dune.
Mr. Chair, can I piggyback on that real quick?
You may.
So when you're doing I haven't seen really your new design too much, and just keep in mind that that primary frontal dune has to still be allowed to move and migrate. So something that is maybe seasonal, temporary, just for that end, when you may already be thinking this,
Yeah.
that would be desirable, because a fixed structure would not allow that, whereas a seasonal structure that could float is potentially more permittable.
Yeah, from a project standpoint, Amy,
Yeah,
exactly. After you left,
yeah,
I thought about it, and they said, you know, instead of putting down a new hardboard walk and bringing it up, we're much better off with something that can float on that dune. Sometimes we may have to expand it a little bit if the slope gets too bad.
Yep.
Because what we've been trying to do, we looked at things like ADA and Disabilities Act, and what are the recommended slopes, and et cetera, and we're trying to, where we can, we're trying to follow that. And so that,
hard with the dune.
yeah, I know. But the Moby mats give us that kind of flexibility, that a hardboard walk we want.
Yep.
So
Mhm.
that, and Arlene
Right.
and I were just talking about that when we were coming in here tonight. so.
All right. Thank you.
Okay. You all set, Mark?
Yes, thank you.
Jim?
Okay, just one point of clarification. Your proposal that we're discussing this evening is really just for this year?
Yes.
And that you're intending to come back to us later in this year with a more permanent solution?
Well, the solution will actually involve Moby mats and where the boardwalk is further landward in the dune field, and there's not as much blowing sand, we'll probably continue a hardened surface at that
Okay,
location.
But that will be
Part of the,
Yes.
solution
part
that
of the
you'll come
whole
back to
solution,
us on.
right.
So this is really just temporary for this season, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, that was what I wanted to clarify.
Exactly.
Couple of questions. Is the boardwalk that's present permitted?
Yes.
Yep, so
Yes.
it is permitted. So we'll talk about that design when folks come back with a notice of intent.
Right.
For now, I have no problem with what you're proposing. It's just a 50-foot, not a landing for this time.
My recommendation is that it's 50 foot long approximately, and that their request this evening, a 10-foot section at the beach end, like a T,
Mhm.
no. Even maybe extending that, maybe you extend the mat out a little bit farther, but not to have like a platform or a landing at the seaward end.
The folks that do have the balloon tire, you know,
Yeah.
wheelchairs, they can traverse on the beach, right? With those
Yes.
tires?
You
So-
saw it today.
Yeah, so I think that the T might not be as essential, and it's a temporary measure. So for me, it's really just a question of how do you make this happen, you know, in terms of process. And I don't think emergency makes sense, I agree with Amy that way. But I don't think I mind administrative. I think for this
Yep.
temporary solution for this season, because the alternative is an RDA.
Yeah. I
And,
wanted to go ahead
Yeah.
from you rather than,
yeah,
so.
yeah, so I think a lot of times in the resource area, I want to see an RDA. In this case, it seems to me a pretty straightforward request, so I wouldn't mind
Okay.
administrative review personally.
So are we saying that we can flare out the end, or
No.
we cannot?
I think for a temporary, I think that probably should come back with the NOI, and if the vehicles can get down there and then move around, I think you're probably okay.
Yeah, like I was saying, the reason we were asking that is because we have a lot of foot traffic,
Mm-hmm.
and the foot traffic they don't come straight to the end, you know, to the end of the walkway. They come up on the sides,
Yep,
and that's pushing the sand down. And that's what creates a problem
right.
for the motorized vehicles
I think,
and for the people that.
yeah. Brad, if you look at the survey sheet, you'll see at the water end of the boardwalk, it's showing a piece of that boardwalk that's exposed, and in that area, it's showing a divot in the dune. And that's what Bill is talking about, where people come up to access that boardwalk. They're walking over the edges of the dune, and it's getting flattened.
Yeah, there's the dune, and then there's the path, and there's a gap between them. And that's what they tend to walk on, especially the kids.
Mhm.
And then it just makes it hard for people that have mobility issues, whether they're using a motorized or they're using a walker or a cane.
Right.
Because it tends to increase the slope in those areas, and that's what I would like to be able to give them some relief for the summer.
Yeah,
That's
Doesn't
what-
have to be 10 feet, but, you know, when you keep it to 3 feet, it gets a little narrow.
could it be like a rectangular, you know, landing? I guess I'll just go with Amy's recommendation, because I didn't get down there, so whatever.
I know what you're saying, I'm
Yeah.
just wondering for like, you're kind of keeping in this, the reason I'm hesitant about it is what you're doing now is really going over something that you already have. What you're
Right.
asking for now is something new
Yeah,
on a coastal beach that we haven't fully vetted yet.
Okay,
So
good.
I understand, but, yeah, I
Yeah.
can't recommend it as part of the
Makes sense.
admin
Okay.
review. It may just take a little maintenance.
Nice. Okay,
Okay?
okay, fair enough.
Thank you.
Yeah, and we have a beach attendant, so we can ask them to keep an eye on it.
All right.
Fair enough. Thank you.
All set?
Yes, thanks.
Sophia?
Looks good to me. That makes sense.
Okay, I have a point of clarification, which is, I thought that you said during your presentation that the moving mat is 4 feet wide, but we're talking
Oh,
about.
I'm sorry,
3
that's my
feet
fault.
width.
It's 3 feet
Oh,
wide.
okay, that was confusing to me as well.
Okay. Good, because you'd have to be doing some excavation in
Yes.
that dune area.
Agreed, yeah, no, it's 3 feet, and that's
3
what,
feet.
when Amy was down, that's what we talked about.
And that's what was throwing me off too about
Yeah.
my question.
So, just a general question about that dune area. I mean, it's like a little mini dune canyon there. And once you get past September and there isn't much of any traffic down there, I mean, clearly it's filled in some, but I would expect there to be significant buildup of sand there, given that in other places there's along Nantucket Sound, not far from there, there's been severe erosion and other effects, and it's puzzling to me that it doesn't seem to have been that impacted there. I mean, an extra foot of sand there isn't a big deal.
Yeah.
And my question really is going towards, for a long-term solution, are you counting on there continuing to be a canyon through the dunes there? I mean, that's kind of a big term for a little thing, but are you counting on that? And won't that continue to fill in and you'll continue to do maintenance? And
Well, you have,
shouldn't we be considering that in the long term, what the right solution is there that doesn't require messing with the dune?
It is one of the things that we're looking at in the design of the project, and one of the reasons that we're looking at using these temporary mats in the summer season and pulling them back out, which will allow that frontal dune the ability to move. We've looked at the shoreline changes maps, and Tom Stello, who's doing the survey for us, is obtaining some relatively frequent aerial photography, which he's can overlay for us so we can see how that dune is moving. But if we keep a permanent structure away from that frontal dune, then everything gets easier. We don't have to deal with the problem of it relocating year to year or season to season, and it's easier to allow the dune to do its thing.
Okay, well, I guess that's a conversation we're gonna have anyway in full when you come back with your longer-term plans. Amy?
Just that area, and you're starting to get accretion when you get to like with the Earl Road, Brooks and Earl Road areas, that's kind of where you have a no loss but no gain, maybe a little bit of loss. As you move farther east, as you get closer to the Allen Harbor Jetty, in general, it seems, over the long term look at it, is that the area has been accreting. But you do have episodic events like we did this year, where just to the, Shore Road to the west of you lost a much more sediment. They had a small amount here, but nothing compared to that. But the long term is that there's accretion here. And we'll see, I know it is also in John Rendon, the harbor master's, capital plan to redo the Allen Harbor Jetty in a couple of years, I believe. So right now that jetty, if you've been to it, I would call it very porous. It's like there's a slat here, there might be a slat over here, but all the sand is kind of going through it at this point.
Just pouring into the channel?
Is pouring right into the channel.
Yeah.
So, in general, hopefully in a few years, there'll continue to be the winning side, unfortunately. On the other side, not so much, but the campgrounds area is used to being kind of sand depleted, and we'll continue to put sand on the campgrounds. But I'll be interested in seeing what you come forward with. And that's something we could also have Greg Berman look at, our coastal processing specialist, going forward.
Okay. Mark, you have?
Yeah, I just wanted to add that I also feel comfortable with Amy handling this administratively, as Brad had stated as well, so.
Yeah, and I think I do also, John.
Okay, I agree. So do we don't need any voting, we just,
No. As long as there's a consensus, we can do it administratively. We now have that ability online. If you go to the Town of Harwich page, go to Community Development Department, and there's a link to it there to get to conservation.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Wonderful. Thank you, guys.
And as soon as, we'll keep an eye out on it, so when it comes in, we can turn around pretty quick for you.
Excellent, thank you.
Thanks.
thanks, Ellie. We're not quite meeting last week's record, but last time. So we have the land management plan tonight. And then minutes. So,
Brad, I forgot to incorporate your fish. I took an older version of your comments,
Yeah.
but I do have your fish
Okay.
table.
Yep. The bigger thing might be the appendix on the water control plan.
Yes.
So have folks seen that, or should I have?
I sent it last time, but,
Okay.
or I put it in Dropbox last time. I don't remember
Yeah.
if it was in this one.
Okay. It's a one-pager. It's just the first draft, just taking a stab at something that stands outside of the plan. Say, okay, here's how you manage the bog water flow.
I can make sure
And
they have that.
I-
I'm sorry, it's not in the one I printed off.
Yep. I can pass around now and folks can look at it. I guess it depends on what you guys want to do. If we're moving towards, are we getting close to finalizing this? Do you think we need another session?
Well, I will tell, of all the comments that we had at the last meeting, I didn't finish doing everything I needed to do. I did get through 12 pages of it. But we do have more. I know Sophia's gonna be working on the species inventory.
If I
But-
can, yeah, just pull we're past the July 4th
crush and have one more loop, give us
Yeah.
one more.
It's up to the commission if you wanna review Brad's tonight, or if we wanna wait till we have a fuller
The what, the water management?
water.
I'll
I
pass it
think-
around, because it's really just 4
I
paragraphs.
can make a few
Yeah.
copies.
You can take a look at it personally, I'd like to have the rest of the commission take a look at it
Yeah,
as well.
yeah, so we probably shouldn't move on anything tonight, but, this is the only thing, I added the fish table, which is the fish table.
Yeah,
My thought was to do this draft for the water management plan, and then one more review, dig in and look at the final review for me,
okay.
and then I'm good. So,
Okay.
if you want to make copies,
I'll make copies.
yeah, if you want to
And
pass.
then,
Just in case someone has ideas, you know, because
yeah,
I'm no expert on water management, you know,
Yep.
but I think, just to get people thinking about it, because,
and please, we don't have to do this tonight, but, cause I just finished it today. The new edits that I did, are in blue in the copy that I just gave you. And those were as a result of the last, like, substantive meeting we had on this.
Yep.
Blue type.
I looked at those, I think they're all really good additions.
We're getting there. Alright, so how many of these? 5?
Say 5, Liz?
Be right back.
So how come you can't vote yet? They haven't like formally transitioned you, yeah, to,
I think it has to go through the select board.
right, formal motion. Okay, soon.
So, I see this in the copy we had a month ago, I guess it was. There is this water flow management section, which isn't here. Right, it's not in this.
I sent a copy to you and Amy that just had the fish table and then that appendix. I didn't want to embed it, so I put it at the very end as an appendix. We could decide to put it inside someplace.
Well, there's this thing here. Is this something different?
That's more like a bullet that says,
I see.
you know,
Okay.
we need to have that in what I
It's a
drafted.
pointer to,
Kind of has, okay, here's how it's gonna be managed, here's who will be responsible, here's what you do seasonally. It's kind of important, I think, because it's been done kind of ad hoc.
tell me something, Amy. Are both forms of town employees' email address still things that work? Because now I have emails from you and from other people that are at harwich-ma.gov and
Yes,
at
those are new.
town.harwich.ma.us,
The old one, that longer one still works.
but we shouldn't use
You
it.
should be using the harwich-ma.gov.
Okay, thank
So
you.
when I get ones from the longer handle, it comes to me, but I don't know for how long it's gonna do that. So the idea is that everybody in the town of Harwich employee is gonna have that harwich-ma.gov.
Makes
There's
sense.
a lot of different endings depending
Yeah.
on what building you're in right now, and,
Oh, boy.
we're universalizing. Can I share this with Heinz too?
Sure. And this is a rough draft.
Yep.
I just kind of there to get the conversation started.
That's good.
Hmm. I see.
I do think the water control flume operation should be the natural resource director, but it can be in conjunction with our department.
Mm-hmm.
But that department controls other flumes
Yep,
and water levels in other parts of town, so I think that would make sense.
yeah.
I mean, it'd be a new person, because Heinz is finishing at the end of this month.
It's a great opportunity, really, just to have, say, hey, new person, this is what you do.
Yes.
And not that Heinz wasn't doing it, but I think it was kind of done by committee without, a great sense of exactly what needed done. 'Cause
It was more done on an as-needed basis, as a reactionary, rather than having a plan for it.
Yeah.
Now we have if we have a plan for it, it's a good thing.
Mhm.
So, can you explain your reasoning for requiring annual public hearings for this?
Oh.
Sounds kind of cumbersome to me, but maybe there's a very well-established precedent or
Yeah.
some reason that I'm just unfamiliar with.
It may not be necessary, but this site has been high profile. I think it hasn't been a consensus as to what we should do here. I thought it might be transparent to have that discussion in a public hearing. Over time, I think these land management actions just become routine, and you don't need a public hearing, but that's why I put that in there.
I see.
And, but we may decide it's not necessary. I don't have exact answers as to how to do it. I'm not a hydrologist, so I'm not sure if, you want public comment?
How to determine what the right flow rate is? Or,
Right. It's a gravity flow, so you're stepping down flow of each of these flumes to make sure it runs through and back out to the river. But I can't tell you right now exact board elevation. Sometimes you have a survey that says, okay, here's the elevation, and this is what you want to keep water flowing. It's kind of been done by eye. And so that's why, I'm not certain, exactly what to say here. You could put a staff gauge in and develop an elevation, or you could have, okay, the boards right now are 14 inches high, and it works. And so maybe that's your target. So there's a couple ways to approach it without a survey.
do people ever use flow meters? I mean, a gauge is just measuring the elevation of the water, but it doesn't tell you if any water's flowing. Right?
It doesn't, but the people that manage these flumes over time, they know. And so then they have elevational targets. They don't, none of these folks are measuring water velocity. That's what people like me do, but I don't think it's necessary here. I think an elevation either tied to a survey or that makes sense is kind of what to do. So it's either board height or maybe target elevation from a staff gauge.
Well, monitoring is gonna have an impact, because the amount of rain that you get is gonna impact the vegetation
Right.
and the surrounding habitat. And so I think it needs to be a little bit by eye to the particular
Yeah,
group that's
right,
in charge of it, and it's gonna be somewhat discretionary.
yeah. You could put a staff gauge in, and that may help. For fishway work that I do, staff gauges are really valuable to set the pond at a certain level, and then you manage that pond level for the fishway. Here, a staff gauge could be the same thing. Someone like a Wayne, or maybe yourself, would just look at it and say, okay, that's where it needs to be. And so I don't know if I have that eye. If you spend enough time at a site, you learn what it should be, and so someone will do that over time.
So the mosquito guys who are concerned with keeping water flowing through there all the time, right? Do they go to the outlet where it's running out and look at whether there's any water flowing all the way through the system? Is that part of how they judge these things?
The guys I know that work for them, they do it by eye. They're pretty good at saying the water's stagnant, the water's moving. They want to see water moving through the flumes. You know, the 3 flume locations, they want to see water passing over the board and moving, you know.
They get really concerned about the peripheral channels too, like
Yeah.
not the main
Yeah,
stream, but where it can pool in
I see.
the edges.
Yeah,
That's-
as soon as those ditches grow in, the water can't travel.
Yeah.
yeah.
We had a huge mosquito problem a couple of years ago.
At that site, yeah.
Does vegetation clogging the channels, is that
Mm,
leading to
It
standing
was also
water?
when we kind of had stopped actively managing things and we
I see.
weren't, there wasn't a constant flow. So if we can maintain flow, the vegetation didn't help, but it was mostly that we hadn't figured out the water level. And we got a stagnation, which is no good, I mean, not just for mosquitoes, but algal blooms, temperature of the water for other aquatic life that's in there. You know, if you have stagnant water, it's not good for a variety of reasons.
Okay, so, but the objective here at this point with this is to incorporate it as an appendix
Yep.
to this main document.
Yep.
It could be tucked into the main body, but it almost seems like a standalone one-pager is helpful. I did put it down to be like a 5-year guidance.
Mhm.
Ooh, there's a typo there. I put down 38. I meant to say 28,
Gotcha.
but we won't be around probably then, at least on the commission.
Yeah,
On the commission.
yeah, right. I was gonna say, speak for yourself.
I'm going down the tubes. But, anyways, that was my thought, is we'll learn a lot in that first 5 years.
Yeah.
We'll have a lot to say about that, and hopefully we can plant some blueberries and have some sense about water in that section, and, you know, there's things we can do.
Okay.
Speaking of blueberries, would it make any sense to be talking about planting blueberries in the fall? Or is it really a spring thing that you wanna do?
No, I mean, planting, fall is general, depending on fall, but planting in the fall is generally okay. I'm not, certain species like it more. I'm not versed in blueberry cultivation, so I don't know if it's better for a spring plant or a fall plant, but
I think by and large, they're probably more successful if they're put out in the springtime.
yeah.
But availability is gonna be an issue depending on the time of year. You generally wanna plan ahead for that to get your plants.
More likely to be supply in the spring, I would think.
You're gonna wanna plan for it. 'Cause
Yeah.
usually the producers
Yeah, yeah.
are committed for what they've got available.
And I don't wanna do it kinda just ad hoc, you know,
Uh-huh.
just
Right.
do it. I'd rather have a little bit of time to plan it.
Yeah, you really wanna be having this conversation in December and January.
Yeah, we'll have it this winter. Or sooner, but we can, yeah.
Is that time enough to order a sufficient number of plants for the
Should be.
spring?
Yep, you're probably gonna have to order by, I would think by February, March.
It'll be one of the more popular features of this plan update. Public side,
Yeah.
be a place to go pick blueberries. So,
Mhm. And still some cranberries.
yeah. All right, well, just, yeah,
Okay.
having folks look at this and then review it,
I'll send it over to Heinz tomorrow.
yeah,
Thank you.
very much a rough draft.
So, is there anything more in here that it makes sense for us to go through tonight? Or you,
Got to, let's see where we got to. We got to page 18, which is the 5-year maintenance summary. Not just the water control structures, but, that's something that should be
19.
updated, but I can do that. I think, I can take a stab at the other comments that were made about naturalization goals, like Brad did water control management, invasive plants, and that's really kind of, I think, what I had done today in the introduction part, because that's where it was previously. That should all be moved to the end of the document.
One thing I think is needed is a good site map, and where you can mark the flumes and mark the different
Yeah.
sections by.
Can work on that.
Do you want to tackle that, or probably a GIS map?
If you want to tackle, that'd be great, and I'll work on wording.
Okay. I could save it as an ArcView or ArcPro.
That'd be great.
Okay. I'm
Um,
not great at it, but I think I can
so
get
you
a
could do it,
draft.
you're probably better than me.
I'm learning.
We don't have that.
You don't have an in-house GIS person? Oh, okay, yeah.
15 years ago, I used to be really good at it.
It changes,
It changes so fast.
yeah.
Actually, Matthew
Yeah.
is a GIS guy.
Oh, okay.
We can ask for his services. We'll chat.
Maybe I'll get a rough ArcPro map together and then get it to you guys, and then
Okay.
could edit it.
I haven't given you the appendices, but I looked at the acquisition information I have all together, the FEMA flood maps, all those other, more updated things. Surprisingly enough, I went to find a new soil survey from Barnstable County, thinking that since '93 they might have redone something. Nope.
No, huh.
So,
30 years.
I guess soil's taken off a long time to change, so it's probably fine.
In the groundwater, I don't have a good reference site specific to groundwater, so I made a point that groundwater could be a factor with surface flows, but I don't know.
It definitely is in the bogs.
Yeah,
We have a lot of freshwater input underground in those bogs.
yeah. Seems like it, but there might be no data, so what can we say?
There's probably, the best data I could get on groundwater would be from the water department,
Hmm.
and they have, in North Harwich, they have stations, which isn't
I
too
wonder
far.
if the SMAS report has anything on that. The Herring River, Brian Howe's SMAS report. Um,
Maybe.
I made a note to put a reference for that report, and I haven't included that citation, but that should be cited.
The MEP?
Yeah, yep.
Old, but, not old.
Yeah. It's where the TMDL comes.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's a
Yeah, the
useful
MEP
reference.
report.
Yeah,
Okay, I'll look into it. I have it somewhere.
yeah.
Okay. Anything more on Bell's Neck for now?
Just a question on the groundwater business. Is the county or the Cape Cod Commission any kind of source for information about this? I know they're shifting their focus, trying to shift focus to freshwater resources, specifically ponds and lakes. I would think that, a comprehensive consideration of the health of ponds and lakes would include gathering information about groundwater flows and things, but I don't know whether those people are doing that.
Well, MEP, I call it SMAS, but, the University of Massachusetts in Dartmouth, they do the MEP reports. They had Ed Eichner, who was really good with groundwater. And there was another guy named Pete, who might have gone to the commission. So, there's a couple individuals that are really good with Cape Cod groundwater, technically.
Yeah, Ed's the point person.
Right. But he might no longer be with them. He might be, I've seen his name associated with like a consulting company, so I'm not positive.
He's doing both.
Yeah, he's doing both.
Because he's still in the Goldbrook project.
Okay.
You know who?
Peter
He's a
Campera?
consultant. Who?
Peter Campera, does that ring a bell?
I don't know.
He was he was pretty good groundwater.
I know, Nick Nelson over at Interflu has been doing a lot of work for the
Yeah.
trust around too.
Yeah.
So he might be a resource. He's always willing to share information.
It could be there's no site-specific groundwater data.
That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah.
If we could find something nearby. I mean, what's that, pond or upper reaches of the estuary that's across the Depot Street? What's
Swan.
Swan Pond? Would that be too far?
It's kind of a different sub-watershed,
Yeah, true.
yeah.
You're right.
But it's almost
Swan
like,
Pond is different than Fan River, so.
yeah. It will help to know, we know some parts of it stay wet. And with board management, the flumes, it helps have some sense of groundwater.
Is it staying wet because of elevation or soil composition?
Yeah, see, I don't know.
Because we did find, when I did some borings out there, and I do like to go dig holes. I don't know, soils are interesting. When I did dig holes there, certain areas I found pretty much consistently across all the bogs there, 12 to 18 inches down is where you found peat.
Mhm.
But in certain areas, the peat was only a couple inches thick, where in other areas I couldn't get through it. It was deep enough.
Yeah.
So the soil, it's not uniform
Yeah.
across the site.
So the peat is what was there before it was planted, and there's a foot of sand on top of that?
Foot to 18 inch, it's pretty consistently 18 inches of sand across the entire thing. And then the northern sections of bog have the thinner layer of peat, and then it turns to sand again. And then the southern end is pretty thick, just the lower end anyway, and I don't know if that, previously was wetland down there. But, it's interesting.
Okay, so what does our next meeting look like? Is it another?
We have we did not get any new, which I wasn't too surprised, because the deadline for submittal was Monday, around the holiday.
Oh, yeah.
So we have 2 hearings that we've continued without testimony. We have Snow Inn Road, the Helfrich property, wanting to do an addition. And then we have 109 Riverside Drive. So we only have 2 hearings.
Wow. So there'll be more time to
Mm-hmm.
address
Yeah,
this.
you can definitely keep putting it on. I'm working with administration to get the RFP out for Herring River,
Mhm.
so, yeah, I'm getting there, slowly.
Okay. Any more comments on this discussion? So there are 2 sets of minutes. I went through them. I sent you my comments, Amy.
Yep.
I don't think there are anything that need to be discussed here. It's all just little stuff.
Yep,
Um,
nothing too substantive.
I would move for approval of both sets of minutes.
I'll second.
Discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
4-0. I'm ready for another motion.
I would move to adjourn.
Wow,
Second.
fast.
All those in favor?
Aye. This is uncharted territory, I just.
Oh, you weren't